Hi everyone, this is our part 2 video of literary terms and concepts. So in the last video we discussed a question that was asked for the June 2020 exam, and in that we discussed about the 4 literary terms and its related theorist. So in this video also we will be dealing with the same pattern. As I said in the last video, this would give you an idea about how you can predict the questions from literary theory, and also you will be familiar with the 4 concepts. So here in this video, we will be dealing with this question that was asked for June 2020, where you have to match list 1 with list 2, that is the concepts and the theorist. So here we have given 4 concepts and then again 4 theorists. So I have mentioned this before, but I am repeating it, that when you learn literary theory, or if you are preparing the notes of literary theory, keep in your mind that the questions are easily predictable for literary theory. You have to look at the theorist, and then you have to look at the important works, and then the important concepts and terms popularized by them. Because if you look at the question pattern of NTA June 2020, you can find that such types of questions where you have to identify the theorist with the concepts or with the terms, and where you have to identify the features of a particular literary term or literary concept can be was frequently asked for the for the June 2020 exam, because you can see 5 or 6 questions of the same pattern that was asked for the last exam. While if you look at the previous year, that is for the June 2019 or the December 2019 exam, you can find that the questions were mostly from the works of the particular author. That is, if you have to match the list 1 with list 2, then the list 1 would be the works of the theorist and list 2 will be the name of the theorist, where you have to identify the works with its relative author. So here one thing that you have to keep in your mind is that if you study literary theory, there is no way, before that remember that there is no way you can skip literary theory just because it is it is too lengthy or it is too non-literary. But the thing is that literary theory, there were more than 10 questions that were asked from literary theory for the past NTA NET exams, and therefore it is very important for you to cover almost all the areas of literary theory. So remember that when you are looking at literary theory, look at the theorist, his or her important works, and then look at the important terms or important coinages or important concepts developed, popularized and coined by them. So in this video we will be dealing with these 4 concepts and the theorist, and if we look at the concepts, I am sure that you will be familiar with almost all the all the concepts, and this actually belongs to an average question if it was not for content and expression, because content and expression and Elmsluff, both these the theorist and the term, it might not be that familiar to everyone. Apart from that, we have heard of competence and performance, signified and signifier, content and expression, Chomsky, Jacobson and Saussure. Okay, so all the thing that you have to keep in your mind is that, or how to score marks for such a question is that you have to identify the name with the correct theorist, or you have to identify the concept with the correct theorist. Even if you know the theorist, even if you know the concepts, that doesn't make sense if you couldn't relate them with each other. So the thing is that while you are studying or while you are preparing for your NTA NET exam, the first thing that you have to keep in your mind is that study in relation with everything. Okay, apart from knowing what competence or performance is, you also have to know who coined the term, who popularized it, who developed it, and it comes under what theory. So these are certain things that you have to keep in your mind while you are preparing for your exam. So now let's look at the concepts. So the first concept is competence and performance. So competence and performance, the 2 terms, they are popularized by Chomsky, Noam Chomsky. So we know about Chomsky being a linguist and a semiotician. So what is competence and what is performance? So you might be familiar with Saussure's Long and Parole. So we now we know what langue and parole is. Langue is technically the rules followed by a particular society, while parole is the individual expression of this langue. So same happens in the case of competence and performance. So competence is the system of linguistic knowledge possessed by native speakers of a language. The system of linguistic knowledge possessed by the native speakers of a language, that is what is called as competence. For example, if my native language is Malayalam, then there would be certain linguistic knowledge possessed or absorbed by every native persons or every native speakers of Malayalam. So that is why my language, or that is why I can communicate with the others. So that is what is called as competence. What we have in your mind regarding the rules and regarding all the general laws regarding a particular language. Then the ideal language system that enables speakers to produce and understand an infinite number of sentences in their language and to distinguish grammatical sentences from ungrammatical sentences. Okay, so this is another thing for competence. The ideal language system that enables speakers to produce and understand an infinite number of sentences in their language. For example, while we were being taught our native language, we haven't been taught about all the possibilities that the words could sum up with, or the words could come up in the future. We just know about the words, we just know about the different grammars in which how we have to connect these words with each other. That is all we know about a language. But since we have this competence in our mind, since we have this linguistic knowledge in our mind, it makes us able to understand all these semantic possibilities created by these words. Okay, that is we also know to distinguish the grammatical sentences from this ungrammatical sentences. We know when a sentence is grammatically incorrect because we know what the grammar is. Okay, and we know how we should connect the words per the true grammar. So that is enabled because of this competence. So competence, it is a system of linguistic knowledge possessed by us that makes us enabled to understand what is being communicated, or it is something that makes us able to produce and understand an infinite number of sentences in our language, and also to distinguish grammatical sentences with ungrammatical sentences. So that is what is called as competence. If that is competence, then what is performance? Performance is the way a language system is used in communication. Okay, even if I know all these general basic rules and knowledge and other things, it might be very different. There would always be a difference in the way in which I communicate with the way in which the others communicate. And even when I speak about the others, they also have each and their own individual characteristics. They also have their own uniqueness. And what makes this unique is the performance, because this is the way in which a language is used in communication, and this is the production of actual utterances. Why we have this competence in our mind is to perform it. Okay, so the performance is the production of the actual utterances. So this is the actual use of language in concrete situations. This is the actual use of language in the concrete situations. How I manage to use my competence in order to communicate. That is what results in performance. Okay, I hope that is clear. So our first term was competence and performance, developed by Noam Chomsky. So about competence, competence is the system of linguistic knowledge that a native speaker have in his mind that enables him to understand all the linguistic and semantic possibilities of a particular language. And performance, the performance is the way in which a language is used in communication, or we can say that it is the actual utterance in a concrete situation. So now let's go to the next term, that is signifier and the signified. So in order to understand signifier and signified, we have to look at the term sign. So we know this concept of signifier, signified, and the that combines to form a sign. This was all developed by Ferdinand de Saussure in his course in general linguistics. So Ferdinand de Saussure, according to him, sign can be any word or anything. So this sign is actually an integration, or we can say sign is actually a mixing up of two important things. One is signifier and the other one is signified. Signifier and the signified. So signifier is the sound image and signified is the concept. Okay, so this will be more clear with this example. So here let's take the example of a tree. So when I say tree is the sign. Okay, so remember, when I say tree is the tree means this complete thing, that is the sign. So the image, when I say tree to you, the image that comes into your mind, okay, it's not sure that it's not necessary that it would be this particular tree. It would be a tree in your neighborhood, it would be a tree in your house, whatever be it. So when I say tree, an image comes to your mind. Okay, and that image is called as the signified. Okay, that image is called as the signified. And when I say tree, that is the linguistic expression, TREE. Okay, so that linguistic expression is what is called as the signifier. That is the sound image. This is how this image is pronounced, or this image is expressed. So that is what is called as tree. And even for this signified, the signifier will change according to the different languages. For English it will be tree, for Malayalam it will be maram, for Hindi it will be vriksh. So you can say that the concept, it actually differs. Okay, so we have this signified, we have this signifier, then tree. So this signifier and signified, when it combines, give you an idea about this sign. Okay, when this signified and the signifier combines, that is when this sound image and the mental concepts combines, it gives you the sign. That is how you understand the thing. So that is what is called as a signifier, signified, and a sign. And there are two important things that you have to keep in your mind while you are looking at signifier and signified. That is, a relationship between a signifier and a signified is arbitrary or culturally constructed. Okay, that means the relationship between a signifier and the signified. In the previous slide I have mentioned that when I say tree, the image that comes in your mind, that relationship, that is culturally constructed. Okay, that image that comes to your mind even if I uses my native language. So that is culturally constructed, or we can say that is arbitrary. It is not something that is fixed. And the meaning is not inherent in the sign, it is assumed. Okay, the meaning is not inherent in the sign, it is assumed on the basis of your cultural context. So the exceptions are onomatopoeia and interjections, because onomatopoeia is actually the sound images or the sound words where we uses the sound of a particular particular animal or particular bird in order to show its sound. So except this, we can say that the meaning is not inherent but it is assumed in a sign, and the relationship between a signifier and a signified is arbitrary or culturally constructed. Let's move on to our third concept, that is metaphor and metonymy. Okay, metaphor and metonymy. Metaphor and metonymy, this was developed by Roman Jakobson. So when we speak about metaphor and metonymy, you might be more familiarized with metaphor, but metonymy is also something that is related to metaphor. So according to Jakobson, language has got a bipolar structure. Okay, just like we say about this binary opposition, it has got a bipolar structure, and this language will always oscillate between the poles of this metaphor and metonymy. It will be either metaphor or it will be either metaphor or metonymy. So the language, it has got this bipolar structure oscillating between the poles of metaphor and metonymy, and the development of any discourse takes place along these two semantic lines. Okay, the development of any discourse will takes place in relation to this metaphor and metonymy. So that is the role of metaphor and metonymy in language according to Jacobson. So let's look precisely. So we know what a metaphor is. Metaphor is what we metaphor happens. It's actually a figure of speech where we use a word or a phrase in order to establish a comparison between two ideas. Okay, for example, love is a rose, he has a heart of gold. For example, if I say love is like a rose, it becomes a simile. You are technically making a direct comparison. Okay, but metaphor is when I say this is that. Okay, when I say this is that. So that is love is a rose, he has a heart of gold. Okay, so this is what happens in metaphor when we use a word or a phrase in order to establish a comparison between two ideas. Then what do you mean by metonymy? Metonymy is the use of one word or the use of a phrase or a word for another. You are using a word in order to represent another, and this another and this word, they have a cause-effect relationship, like or an a cause-effect relationship or an abstract concrete relationship. So their relationship, it might vary, but we are using one word for another. Okay, for example, this land belongs to the crown. When I say this land belongs to the crown, I am using the word crown as a replacement for the king and the government. Okay, since the crown only goes for the king, it actually means the land belongs to the king. Similarly, you can't fight City Hall. Okay, that you can't fight City Hall in the sense City Hall is just a building, but when I say City Hall, it actually replaces the entire nation. Okay, so this is what is called as metaphor and metonymy. So metaphor is comparing two ideas, metonymy is using one word to replace other, while the relationship is either cause-effect relationship or abstract concrete relationship. And when it comes to literature, we can say that poetry is essentially metaphoric and prose is essentially metonymic. Okay, poetry is metaphoric and prose is metonymic. Poetry, because it is widely used during Romanticism and Symbolicism, and it focuses on signs and on the principles of similarity. Prose is metonymic, it focuses on the referent and is based on continuity, and it is predominant in realism. So we can say that poetry is essentially metaphoric and prose is essentially metonymic. Okay, and that's all about metaphor and metonymy. So remember, metaphor and metonymy, this was popularized by Jacobson, and according to him, the language, it oscillates between the bipolar structures of metaphor and metonymy. Metaphor is comparing two ideas and metonymy is replacing one word for another with which it has a relationship, either of cause-effect relationship or other arbitrary concrete relationship, etc. And poetry is essentially metaphoric, prose is essentially metonymic. Moving on to our last concept. Before knowing the concept, let's have a look at this writer, that is Louis Elmslup. So he is a Danish linguistic and semiotician who was born in the year 1899 and 1965. I am speaking about him because he is not that popular. So he was the founder of Copenhagen Linguistic Circle, and his main study was to make Saussure's general theory more rigorous and clear. So he actually laid his works, or he focused in order to develop the works of Ferdinand de Saussure, and you can find that his concept of expression and content, this is more similar to like that of signifier and the signified, where he is trying to make it more realistic in sound. Okay, so that's the difference between the signifier and the signified and the expression and the content. But with the very word, you can have a comparison that expression would be like the signifier and the content would be like the signified. So according to him, for a sign function to exist, there must be an expression and a content. For a sign function to exist, there must be an expression and at the same time also a content. and a sine function, it exists between these absolutely inseparable terminals. So this expression and content, they are absolutely inseparable. There is no expression without a content, there is no content without an expression. So these inseparable terminals combine together to create a sine, or that actually shows the function of a sine. A sign is not some mark or gesture with intrinsic qualities, but is what functions as a sign in a given context. For example, we can say that an arrow is not necessary to always be a sign. Okay, it can vary, but it depends on the context. Okay, so sign is not something, a mark or a gesture with intrinsic qualities. This is what Saussure says, that sign, the meaning of a sign, it is not inherent, but it is assumed. So this is what he speaks here. A sign is not some mark or gesture with intrinsic qualities, but is what functions as a sign in a given context. So we can say that sign expression plus sign content, and he coins a term called as functives. Okay, a term that shows like sign expression plus sign content together creates this functives. So a sign function, it depends on the mutual correlation of the functives in order to be what it is. Okay, I hope that is clear. The sign function, it depends on the mutual correlation of the functives in order to be what it is. So it is often the relationship between the expression and the content that determines the meaning of the particular sign. Okay, now let's look back at the question. So these are the concepts, and let's match it with the theorist. So competence and performance, we know these are the concepts developed by Noam Chomsky. Then we have signified and the signifier, which can be related to Ferdinand de Saussure, and metaphor and metonymy to Roman Jakobson, and content and expression to Emsloff. Okay, so these are the 4 concepts and the 4 theories. So let's look at the option. So the answer would be option 4, A1, B4, C2 and D3. So the answer would be 4. And along with this, there was another question that was asked from metaphor in the previous in the June 2020 exam. So let's have a quick look on that question. Which of the following statements by Roman Jakobson is true about metaphor and metonymy? I have added this question because we just mentioned about metaphor and metonymy. So keep in your mind that again this is a concept of Jakobson. Okay, so while you are preparing from literary theory, keep in your mind to look at the all important concepts, because for a single exam you can find 2 questions asked from a single concept. So again, let's look at the question. Which of the following statements by Roman Jakobson is true about metaphor and metonymy? Let's look at the option. So you have to identify the correct statement. Metaphor is alien to the continuity disorder, whereas metonymy is alien to similarity disorder. Metaphor is alien to the similarity disorder and metonymy to the continuity disorder. Metaphor is alien to both the similarity disorder and the continuity disorder, and metonymy is common to both. Metaphor is common to both similarity disorder and continuity disorder, but metonymy is alien to both. So let's have a look on here. First, let's have a look. Metaphor is alien to continuity disorder, whereas metonymy is alien to similarity disorder. So we know that is an incorrect statement. So let's go to the next statement. Metaphor is alien to the similarity disorder and metonymy to the continuity disorder. Okay, so this is the correct statement when it comes to this question, because metaphor will always be alien to the similarity disorder. Okay, we know about metaphor. It is a comparison between one thing to the other, and metonymy, we know metonymy, it's not a comparison, but you are using one word to replace the other, and these 2 words have got something in common. So the correct answer to this question is option number 2. Okay, so that was another question regarding the terms and concepts from literary theory. So in this video we discussed the 4 terms and concepts that was asked from literary theory for the June 2020 exam. So I hope you would be familiar with the types of questions that come from literary theory, and also I hope you would get an idea, you got an idea about how to prepare from literary theory for your NTA NET exam. And that's all for this video. Thank you.